Bonjour class! Our second étape 3 video is going to review le passé composé. So this is video number 2. We are on page 70 of Trésor du Temps. Please open your book and follow along. So 3.2, le passé composé, conjugaison, conjugation of le passé composé. First, tous les verbes forment leur passé composé avec l'auxiliaire avoir et le participe passé du verbe. So all the verbs form their passé composé. Avec is with l'auxiliaire, the auxiliary avoir, et le participe passé and the past participle du verbe of the verb. Sauf, except, sauf, les verbes de mouvement, the verbs of movement, expliqués plus loin dans cette leçon. Explained plus loin is further dans cette leçon, in this lesson. Et les verbes pronominaux. So for these verbs, you can turn to page 207 and look at those. So because avoir in the present tense is used as an auxiliary, auxiliaire in the passé composé, we need to know how to conjugate it. So we have j'ai, tu as, il a, elle a, on a, nous avons, vous avez, ils ont, elles ont. Le passé composé des verbes réguliers des trois groupes, so the passé composé of regular verbs in the three groups. The three groups of verbs are ER, IR, and RE verbs. So to conjugate those past participles, for an ER verb, you take off the ER and you add E with an accent aigu. J'ai parlé, I spoke. J'ai déjeuné, I ate lunch. IR verbs, you take off IR and add I. So j'ai fini, I finished. J'ai réussi, I succeeded. And RE verbs, you take off RE and you add you. J'ai entendu, j'ai répondu, I heard, I responded. This chart is all irregular past participles in the passé composé, so now is a good time to pause the video and copy this chart down. So we have boire, to drink, bu, drank, conduire, to drive, conduit, drove, connaître, to know, connu, knew, courir, to run, couru, ran, devoir, to must, do, had to, dire, to say, dit, said, écrire, to write, écrit, wrote, faire, to do or to make, fait, did or made, falloir, to must, fallu, had to, lire, to read, lu, read, mettre, to put, mis, put, ouvrir, to open, ouvert, opened, plaire, to please, plu, pleased, pleuvoir, to rain, plu, rained, prendre, to take, pris, took, recevoir, to receive, reçu, reçu, received, vivre, to live, vécu, vécu, lived, voir, to see, vu, saw. And here's what these verbs look like with their auxiliaries, avoir. Notice that here, il a fallu, this doesn't use je. Il is the only subject that falloir uses, and so is plu, because this is it was necessary, and it rained. Le passé composé de être, avoir, et les verbes d'état d'esprit. So the passé composé of être, avoir, et les verbes d'état d'esprit, and the state of mind verbs. État d'esprit, verb. State of mind verbs. So these verbs are généralement, generally used, employés, generally used in the imparfait. Quelquefois, sometimes, ces verbes expriment une action soudaine. Sometimes these verbs express a sudden action. Dans ce cas, in this case, dans ce cas, you use le passé composé. Here are some examples. So with être, j'ai été surpris quand je vous ai vu. I was surprised when I saw you. Avoir, j'ai eu peur quand j'ai entendu ce bruit terrible. I had fear when I heard this terrible noise. Croire, to believe. Quand j'ai eu cet accident de voiture, j'ai cru un instant que j'étais mort. When I had this car accident, I believed for an instant that I was dead. Pouvoir, to be able to. Je ne pouvais pas ouvrir ma porte, mais soudain, la clé a tourné et j'ai pu l'ouvrir. So I couldn't open my door, but suddenly the key turned and I was able to open it. Savoir, to know. Saviez-vous que le président de la République française était en visite à Washington? Non, je ne le savais pas, mais je l'ai su en écoutant la radio. So, did you know, saviez-vous, that the president of the French Republic was visiting Washington? No, I didn't know that, but I suddenly knew that, or I learned that while listening to the radio. And vouloir, to want. Ma mère préfère rester à la maison pendant le week-end. Mais dimanche, par extraordinaire, elle a voulu sortir. So my mom prefers to stay at the house during the weekend. But Sunday, extraordinarily, she wanted to go out suddenly. There are lots of charts and pictures that help you remember passé composé. So, passé composé des verbes de déplacement, passé composé of deplacement or movement verbs. So here's one. It's called la maison d'être, the house of être. So usually there's a picture of a house and it shows you in all different rooms people doing things that represent movement, and all of these verbs use être as their auxiliary in the passé composé. So here we have être, the house of être. We have naître, to be born. Naître, to be born. Devenir, to become. Devenir, to become. Mourir, to die. Mourir, to die. Monter, to go up. Monter, to go up. Descendre, to go down. Descendre, to go down. Tomber, to fall. Tomber, to fall. Arriver, entrer, to arrive, to enter. Arriver, entrer, to arrive, to enter. Aller, sortir, partir. To go out, to leave. Aller, sortir, partir. To go out, to leave. Passer, passer, to pass by. Venir, to come. Venir, to come. Revenir, rentrer, retourner. To come back, to re-enter, to return. Revenir, rentrer, retourner. To come back, to re-enter, to return. The Dr. and Mrs. Vandertramp verbs are the same idea, so they're all the verbs that use être in the passé composé, and the beginning of each verb spells out Dr. and Mrs. Vandertramp, and here are their past participles. Some of them are irregular, so you should copy down this table. And same idea here, so this is a chart that sort of shows how you would conjugate aller with être in the passé composé. And of course, we need to review the conjugations of être to conjugate with être in the passé composé. So present tense conjugations are je suis, tu es, il est, elle est, nous sommes, vous êtes, ils sont, elles sont. So for passé composé usage, usage, and this is now on page 72, passé Passé composé expresses an action or an event. So, for example, action, j'ai fini de travailler à midi. I finished working at noon. J'ai mangé un sandwich et j'ai bu une tasse de café. I ate a sandwich and I drank a cup of coffee. Ensuite, je suis retourné au bureau et j'ai repris mon travail à 1h15. So next, I returned to the office and I restarted my work at 1:15. So those are all actions. Finished working, ate, drank, returned, and started work again. And for an event, l'avion est parti à son heure habituelle, mais il a rencontré du mauvais temps qui l'a forcé à changer de direction. So the plane left at its normal time, but it met some bad weather that forced it to change direction. Il a essayé d'atterrir sur un petit aéroport, mais là, il a frappé un avion privé, il a pris feu, et il y a eu des morts. So it tried to land on a little airport, but there it hit another private plane. It caught fire, it took fire, and there were deaths. Le passé composé usage à soudaineté, suddenness. Suddenness is expressed by the passé composé. So, for example, dimanche soir, on Sunday night, suddenly. Un jour, one day, suddenly. À midi juste is like right at noon. Soudain, suddenly. And the length, la longueur de temps, the length of time, does not change the fact that it's an action. La longueur de temps ne change pas le fait, the fact, que c'est une action, that it's an action. So it could be 40 jours, 40 days. That's still an action. It's still passé composé. Des millions d'années, millions of years. The length of time does not matter. It's still passé composé if it's an event, an action. These past tenses may be more easily understood with a timeline. So just to give you an idea of how to compare these two tenses, we're going to start with le présent. So le présent, the present, is over here. And the passé composé is represented by just a straight up and down line like this, a notch on the timeline. So this first notch might be when I was born. Je suis née. I was born. I'm adding an E because I'm a girl. Je suis née. And the second one maybe is when I turned 10. I suddenly had 10 years. I turned 10. So I'm going to say that I was little sometime between when I was born and maybe a little bit past when I was 10, but there's really no set time that distinguishes someone being little. So if I want to say j'étais petite, I was little, this is really an undefined amount of time. I don't know what day that started and what day it ended. So this is represented by this squiggly line on this timeline. And maybe it kind of ended somewhere after I was 10 years old. But passé composé is an event. It's like, here this happened. Then I turned 15. Then I went to college. Then I graduated from grad school. So those are all notches on the timeline, as opposed to I was little. So that's visually how passé composé and imparfait are represented on a timeline.